Well, this is a project that I started around the end of 2013, and the reason why I started it at that time is because I got a prize, the TED prize it's called, and the way it works is that they give you the prize, but you get to use the money only when you have a project that you propose. My project was based on my previous work, and the name of the project is The School in the Cloud. What is the school in the cloud? Well, it's based on two or three previous findings. The first finding, which is about 16 years ago, and therefore not very surprising in today's world, is that children in groups can figure out how to use a computer and how to use the internet. Now, that's kind of obvious to anyone who's seen a child with an iPad today, but it wasn't obvious 15, 16 years ago. I provided children with computers in public spaces in India and in a couple of other countries. The experiment got called the hole in the wall. And I was able to show that groups of children, unsupervised, can actually learn how to use computers. So what? Well, having learned how to use computers, what we discovered next was that they began to ask questions into search engines, all by themselves. I mean, of course, they play lots of games and they do all sorts of things, but they also start asking questions. And they quickly find out that the internet is capable of answering almost anything. I thought that they might run into incorrect answers. But the interesting thing is that groups of unsupervised children seldom make mistakes because these groups are self-correcting. We called this a self-organized learning environment. And about 6 years ago, I brought that idea into schools in the United Kingdom. How do you do that? Well, you take a classroom, you take out all the furniture, you put in a few computers with internet access, big screens, you let in some children. Maybe if there are 5 computers, you let in 20 children, and you ask them a question. You ask them an interesting question. For example, you might ask them, if the moon is very far away from the earth, how can we still see it? They might be, you would ask this kind of a question to maybe 5-year-olds. And they'll give you some guessed answers. Then you would say, well, don't guess. Why don't you use the internet? Now, there are too few computers, so they start clustering around the computers, working together, which is, from the old hole-in-the-wall experiment, very important. And then they come up with a whole lesson, which happens by itself, about the distance between the Earth and the Moon, the diameter of the Moon, how far can we see anyway, how much light is required. So you get a whole science lesson coming out of just that one question without a teacher. Self-organized learning environment started spreading out of England into the rest of the UK, then into Europe, then into the Americas and Australia, and finally went global. At the same time, I also realized another thing, that if you take retired people, not necessarily retired, but if you take people with an interest in children, and if you ask for 1 hour of their time every week from home to go on Skype and speak with children, you can get thousands of them. We gave it a name. We called it the Granny Cloud. What do? Well, they don't teach. They simply engage the children in an interesting conversation, maybe about their town, about their country, about all sorts of things like that. We call them the Granny Cloud. When I got the TED award, I decided that I would put the Granny Cloud and the self-organized learning environment together and then see where that takes the children. We call this combination the school in the cloud. In the project that I'm doing now, I have built 7 of them. 5 are in India and 2 are in the United Kingdom. They range all the way from the remotest corner of India through to middle class England. And over a 3-year period, we want to see what happens to the children's reading comprehension, their ability to discern correct information from incorrect information, and how far can they go with taking charge of their own learning. I'm about halfway through, a year and a half has passed. Well, it's a difficult issue. The project that I just described, so far the evidence says that it works very well. Children enjoy themselves immensely. Teachers agree that learning objectives get fulfilled almost out of nowhere. But there is a problem. The problem is the assessment system. If the assessment system consists of standardized examination, then children need to memorize things. They don't like to. When I was a child, I didn't like to memorize things. Today's children, even less so. Why? Because our education system is designed from a time where you could not carry a library full of books on your back. So somebody had to select a few books and say, these are important, you've got to read them and remember them. Because in life, if you run into a problem, you'll use that knowledge to solve the problem. Well, that world has gone because you can carry the library with you all the time. So today's child will say, why do I need to remember? When I need to know something, I can find out in seconds. How do we make that child respect education? Well, I think there is a simple way to make that change. Allow the use of the internet during examinations. What will that do? Well, the kind of question you ask will have to change. Because obviously asking a question that can be answered by a search engine in a few seconds is of no point. So your questions will become more qualitative, will require more thinking, something that doesn't have an obvious answer, and so on. It will change the teachers, because if you know that your class is going to have access to the internet during the exam, the way in which you teach and the way in which you encourage the children to investigate by themselves will have changed completely. It will change the curriculum, because there's no point in putting in a curriculum most of which is available from Wikipedia or something like that. A curriculum would have to then consist of deeper, bigger questions. So it seems to me that you need just one administrative decision, a really simple one. Allow the internet during the examination, and it will drive change through the system. I'm waiting for somebody in the admin to listen to this and take action on it. But that, I think, is my biggest problem, and I get this problem all around the world. Surprisingly, the problem is more intense with parents from lower income families, economically stressed families. What happens in those families is that the parent says, look, there may be lots of things wrong with the system, but my child's got to go through that system in order to be able to earn a living. And that is life and death. So they, while they agree that the system should be changed, they will resist that change in the fear that the ensuing instability of when that change is made might hurt their child. So what shall I do? How shall he do his homework? Who is going to guide him? Is it true that a teacher's role has to be different? They're scared and they resist the change. Politicians can sense that resistance and are therefore also reluctant to make the change. What's going to happen if people say, this is rubbish, you shouldn't have done this? The richer parents, the economically advantaged parents, are surprisingly enough not too worried. They know that they can pull their child out of any trouble using wealth. So should one drive that change from the wealthy end? Should one drive it from the economically deprived end? I am trying to find out what might be the best way to cause that change. But in the end, the attractive part of this change is of how easy it would be to make, because it is only one administrative decision. Yes, I've been asked this question before, and I have mixed feelings about it. Attendance is made compulsory in universities and in schools, mainly because of a fear that if it was not, then learners will not come for all the lectures or whatever, all the learning sessions. Why would the learners not come to a learning session unless they thought it was irrelevant or that there was another way? I have heard children say, I don't want to go for this class because I can Google it in 2 minutes. A child with that belief is not going to come to class unless it was made compulsory. So there is a sad case for having compulsory attendance. It's not a happy situation. I wish there was a system where you would not have to make attendance compulsory, where children will come in any case because they know that it's valuable for them or that it's enjoyable for them. It's a challenge for teachers. Well, I guess the one thing that I think everybody needs to realize is that there isn't a fixed agenda in education anymore. There isn't a box full of things that you have to know. And if you know that, then you can go through the rest of your life. We used to have a world like that. We've had that for hundreds of years. But we don't have that world anymore. So the skills that we think are essential today may be unknown tomorrow. So what should we do with an education system under those circumstances? We have to step back and we have to enable learners to face the unknown and to make their way through the unknown by themselves. We have no other choice.